You're listening to Every Day's a Saturday USMC Veteran Podcast.
Now introducing your host of Every Day's a Saturday USMC Veteran, the one-man show, Brian Roof.
Hey, what's going on, friends and fam? Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another great day, another great interview. All right, hey, I would just like to start off by saying, got some stickers out there. If you guys would like some free stickers, just shoot me your email. Shoot it to me at shoot me your mail. Gosh dang, your address. I can't even talk right now. And email me at everydaysasaturday365@yahoo.com, and I'll shoot you guys some free stickers just for being a listener to the show. I appreciate each and every one of you guys for continuing to listen into the show. I'm excited for my next guest. My next guest served his country proud in the United States Navy. He's an author. He is out there doing great things for the veteran communities, trying to spread awareness where a lot of people don't want to talk about the suicide word, right? I mean, and I'll probably get banned on certain channels just for saying the word itself. And that's probably part of the problem, right? Is that we can't even talk about it because it gets censored out. It's kind of crazy. We can't talk about something to prevent something because of using certain keywords. But we'll have my next guest come on, talk all about himself, and that is Paul Fleming. What's going on, brother? How you doing?
What's going on there, Mr. Roof?
Hey,
how are you?
Hey, I can't complain, and if I did, you know what they say, no one really cares, But hey, man, I'm excited to have you on. We're going to be talking about some, things out there that I think a lot of people need to hear. It may not necessarily be, a part of their life right now, but it always has a chance to be a part of their life, veteran or not, either way. Because let's just face it, a lot of, problems in the world and stuff like that, and jobs and things like that lead to a lot of pressures, and a lot of people are having problems with. But Paul, let's go ahead and get to know all about you, where you grew up, what made you join the Navy, and talk about, what you did after you got out.
Well, that's a lot. So let me give you the cliff notes on it. I was born back in a time when I was born and raised in Connecticut, and I had a rather difficult childhood, to be polite. My first book I ever wrote was 2,442 Steps to Crazy, and it kind of talks about, well, it tells the story of childhood abuse, trauma, the foster system, a stepfather that I call crazy, because man was crazy, but and my faith, which is a critical part of my existence, and how my faith carried me through the toughest times in life, right? Whether it was as a kid or later on in life. But anyway, I was almost at 14. Was working full time, managed to scrape my way through high school, and I joined the military at 17. Of course, there was a former Marine who was sitting on a bench with a gavel, who when I was 17, he wanted to see my enlistment papers, and kind of sidestep a prosecutor's intent to send me in a different direction, right? So joined the Navy at 17. I knew I was going in the military. I knew it, as long as I can remember. Went in the Navy, had a hell of a ride, got fouled up a couple times, one pretty significant, physical injuries. Didn't realize the mental toll it took for quite some time, but when I got out, I was discharged to VA and issued a rating. And in my latest book, A Date with Suicide, we don't just talk about suicide. We talk about all, a number of things that built up in me that led me down that path towards suicide. So I've got a great wife, been with her, as I like to say, for 50 years. Okay. And I wow. Proudly say that a veteran spouse is the most difficult job on the planet. And I was blessed that Great Spirit installed a saint, an angel inside my wife, because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be here. There's no doubt about that in my mind. But anyway, I've had 6 kids. We got 9 grandchildren. So now I'm doing my best here to help fellow vets, especially move past suicide. And but suicide isn't the only thing I work on. I spent 10 years in DC as part of Vet Force, nation's largest entrepreneur task force, representing over 300 countries, 300 service organizations. Public Law 109-461 is a cornerstone to Vet Force's success. That's commonly called the Vet First Contracting Act. So if you ever want to do a show on veteran entrepreneurship, I know a fair amount about how that system works. So I think I'll leave it there before I spend the next hour telling you guys about me and you all fall asleep and somebody can't.
No, so we'll go ahead and back it up a little bit. So when you decided to join the Navy, did you have a job in mind? What did they end up steering you into? Let's talk more about your career, what you kind of did in there.
Yeah, I didn't have any guidance joining the military. I didn't have anybody to talk to. When I say I was on my own, I mean, look, I'm telling you, I was homeless at 14. So if you can think back to when you were 14, I ended up working full time throughout high school and my senior year. I worked 3rd shift, went to school at, got out of work at 7, went to school, took a shower, went to class at 8. And at 12:30, I was back at the place I was staying and watching The Young and the Restless, right? Back when there was 3 channels.
Right.
So I didn't have any guidance. So, and I really, I couldn't read to save my life. So when I took the ASVAB, I closed one eye and started filling in circles, right?
That's basically how I took it. But, yeah.
Right? Far too many of us done the same thing.
Yeah.
So when I was in boot, I was kind of looking at the Blue Jacket manual, and I stumbled onto the submarine force. And one of my grandfathers rode submarines for a career in the Navy, including 2 years of war patrols in the Pacific. My other grandfather landed on the beach of Normandy, second wave.
Wow.
But I decided to follow in the submarine force, and I got assigned to the USS Dallas, SSN 700, the boat made famous by Tom Clancy's book and movie, The Hunt for Red October.
No kidding, man.
Yeah, you look behind me.
Submarine life.
Dallas coming out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh dang, how many could fit on that submarine?
Well, you could probably fit a couple hundred, but you'd be squishing everybody in.
Right, like sardines at that rate.
We put the sea with roughly 120.
Dang. Wow. Now, how long do you guys usually, go down below surface and stuff like that? What's the longest you've ever been under?
Yeah, so there's no limit. The only thing that limits us is or causes us to come back up is when we run out of food. Right? That's the only reason. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
So my first run, I left the East Coast, flew halfway around the world, met the boat in Diego Garcia, which is a British island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. We put to sea a couple days later, and we did 78 days underwater, surfaced, and then did some other ops. And that was the ass end of a 6.5 month run where we came back through the Panama Canal. So I'd circumnavigated the globe.
Wow.
We 2, 3, 4 months nonstop is nothing, so I think the longest run we did was probably the Operation Obtain Document 3 when Muammar Gaddafi drew his line of death across the Mediterranean, and Reagan sent us in to, kind of say, yeah, that's not a good thing. So
wow.
we spent a long time in that operation. A lot of months, a lot of months of 6 on, 6 off.
Yeah, no kidding, man. I mean, I gotta imagine that kind of life. So you guys, I mean, you guys don't breach much, huh? So you don't see no sunlight, anything like that. I mean, do they have you guys eating like a special diet and being on certain vitamins and stuff like that? Because you're not getting a lot of sun and.
No, but I will say this: the submarine forces, got the best food in the military. Period. They fed us well, with one exception. when you went to battle stations, you know, on a submarine, you're not making any noise, so you don't do a lot of cooking.
Right.
When we were doing ops where we were at battle stations, you know, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches were the theme. And if you ever remember the days when you had to mix up the peanut butter because the oil, you know, kind of surfaced on it. We had a lot of peanut butter. Funny story, I haven't had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich since the day I left the Navy.
You got a little tired of them, huh?
Oh Lord. Oh man. Right?
So I mean that's got to be crazy. We don't get a very much of a look inside submarines often. You know, a couple movies and the way, you know, that's Hollywood, the way they portray things all the time. So it's kind of cool. I've always had a liking for submarines and stuff like that myself. Now, is there times where you guys could go like complete dark and all that stuff like that, and all that because of radar, or are they usually built pretty well to do that? I mean, because I know Russia's always teetering around and stuff like that. You know, I think that's probably one of the ones that usually are kind of messing around with us the most is probably Russia. Did you guys, I mean, have like instance where you got to go complete dark and all that, or?
Oh yeah, I was attached to Dallas for 3 years, 2 months. We were deployed for 2 years, 1 month. All right.
Wow.
You know, well, some of those runs were training ops and, you know, letting the fleet kind of figure out how to find a submarine. But the heart of them were following Russian subs, you know, that come out of the North Atlantic, drop past the Sosa nets, and they get picked up by the Russian or the American attack subs, just like Tom Clancy's book, you know. And well, recently everybody was all up in arms that a Russian sub was patrolling along the eastern seaboard. Well, I'm telling you, they're always there, but there's always in you know, my world, there's always an American sub kind of shadowing them, watching them. But if you watch the movie and you see the Crazy Ivan, it's when the Russian sub clears its baffles, does 180 and flanks backwards, you know, those are pretty hair raising. You know, more than one American sub's been run over by a Russian sub clearing its baffles.
Wow. I mean, gosh dang. I know that they probably, out of all the different places, because they're close to us too, right? I mean, from Alaska, I heard from a certain point, you can kind of almost see their land or see lights over there. So, I mean, we're pretty close to Russia. I don't think a lot of folks understand how close we are, and that's why they're playing around in our seas a lot. I mean, I imagine that it's a daily occurrence, you know, if not monthly or something. I know that they don't mess around.
Well, you said it best, you know, right? I mean, the ones that we see, okay, you know, like those are the ones you're not worried about. It's the ones that you can't,
right? And see, and that's the thing, right? In America, we play very nicely. You know, go and do this on and off of, you know, shores of certain other countries and see what happens. You know, you might get sunk, but you know, I think that's why Russia plays with us, right? They're just like, what are you gonna do about it? You know, yeah, we'll play the cat and mouse game with you guys. I mean, all day long. They want to see how close they can get. I imagine, see how close they can get and see how much they can get.
Well, remember World War II, the Germans were sinking ships daily up and down the East Coast and the Gulf. All right. And a number of German subs were sunk. But, you know, there's even video of German subs.
That's what I was going to say. German's another one that likes to come over here and mess around too. You know, and I'm sure Chinese is probably right there with them.
Well, when that Chinese sub popped up in the middle of the fleet in the Pacific, I said, man, that's a message. That right there is a message. Okay. So, you know, we don't know the details. You know, did one of our subs open its barn doors and, you know, shoot a water slug, right? And send a message to that Chinese sub to pop to the surface and we're going to sink you? Or did they pop to the surface just to let us know that
we're here?
You know, we're in the middle of your fleet. Because again, everything you're doing out there is protecting the carriers, right? I mean, what are the rest of the ships for? Shoot some missiles, shoot some torpedoes, but the power is in the aircraft carriers.
I definitely feel like Americans were way more tolerable towards the enemy than they are towards us in a way. Like, I've even heard, even in the air, sometimes even the Russian MiGs, they get close and they mess around too. I mean, I think they're always playing around with us to see how much are we going to allow. Because once we shoot one of them down, once we pop one of them out, that creates a whole nother problem, right?
Yeah. I've listened to my adopted godfather. He's now buried in Arlington, but he used to play. He was a retired Master Chief. He used to play on the P3s and buzz along the airspace of other countries, especially China. They had some stories, along with my uncle Paul Ignace, who did 2 tours of Vietnam as a Navy SEAL in the early throes of Vietnam. They got some stories. Back in the days. I don't see them. My godfather's passed now, but I don't see my uncle that often. But when I was part of Vet Force, because they were the 2 of the 5 leaders of Vet Force, man, they would start drinking and start telling some stories, and man, just sit back, buckle up, and take notes, because they had some wild stories, man.
Yeah, I love talking to a lot of the old timers and stuff like that, especially getting their stories, right? And that's why I'm glad we got these podcasts and video stuff now, where we're recording it, capturing it, and also a lot of people out there starting to write their stories too, right? And
Yeah.
write the autobiography and put it out on a book, which is great, right? Exactly. Donald Dunn, Echoes of War. Go get yourself a copy. As a matter of fact, that's a great book, and kind of walks you through a lot of being active through getting out. I mean, that guy had a family all the way through it as well, which that's a hard thing to have a family and have to be deployed, and it spend 20 years of your life in there. But so many veterans out there do that, and it's just crazy, you know what I mean? But yeah, I gotta imagine the submarine life for you guys, was that like kind of a new thing you had to get used to, or were you were pretty much adapting right away? Because I know it's probably close quarters too, right? I mean, do you guys, or were you in more of one that you could kind of walk freely through?
Yeah, there's no submarines out there that you're going to walk freely. I mean,
Right.
these things are war weapons, right?
Yeah.
Multi-billion-dollar war weapons. They're not built for comfort.
Right.
They're built for speed and silence and lethality, right? So there's the way you get used to them is you climb down the hatch, they send the lines off, put to sea, bolt the hatches down, submerge, suck it up, get it done, right?
Yeah. There's no time.
There's no pre-training.
Nah. Now, did you guys ever have an instant where someone totally was freaking out, just lost it in there because being down there for so long, or I mean, I imagine there's people out there that have phobias and hysterias, and that they don't even realize until all of a sudden they get to a certain level or something goes down.
Yeah. So when I write, I incorporate stories that happen either on the boat or off the boat. So I'll tip you on one that I haven't told in my books yet, but I will. We had a chief, E7, right? We were deployed doing some pretty risky shit. Long months of war patrol. Okay. And then we were not rationed up. So we were sucking on peanut butter and jelly and for months on end. It was a rough run. Guys were out of cigarettes, and any of the comforts had been gone for months. Right. And we were ordered to out chop. Somebody was taking over our box, and then something happened. They spun us around and sent us back in. And when we got back into our op box and picked up who we were supposed to be watching, one of the chiefs who was the chief of the watch. He's the guy that controls all the ballast and the ability to go up and down and so on. Freaked out, lost it, stood up, grabbed the chicken switches, and was going to pop us to the surface. Chicken switches are 2 valves that'll blow all the water out of your ballast and put you on the surface. Okay, so it's your emergency blow system. That's what happens when you pop the chicken switches. Okay, you come out of the water.
Yeah,
right? And then you've got to be careful that you don't lose yourself on your descend after you pop to the surface. Well, yeah, we had a chief lose it. He stood up, grabbed them switches, and he was gonna put us on the surface. And the senior the senior enlisted and the officers, when we're in those places, are all carrying sidearms, right? So that somebody doesn't scram the reactor and or fire a torpedo prematurely, something, or put you on the surface, right? Because if we'd have hit the surface, we would have been a target.
You're right.
20 guys, 120 guys would be memories in cemeteries right now. But the O-gangers pulled them apart, settled them down, locked them up, and then we went right back to War Patrol. Okay. So he had a couple of guards on him for a while. And then when we got out of there, they took him off the boat. So yeah, it happens. It happens. And when it's going on, you don't really think about it. And of course the Navy doesn't want you to talk about it. Right.
Yeah. Right.
I don't want to talk about the mental welfare of our war fighters, so it's left to us to deal with it post military. Right.
That's it. And that's you're only good to them while you're in, and you're basically like a piece of equipment to them as well, right? And when your time's up, you're no good to them no more. They don't, they kind of send us on our way, right? Because I do imagine in submarine life, there's a lot of different things that can come out. I mean, you guys can start getting claustrophobic. Imagine there's things that there's malfunctions that maybe happened, or things like that. There's just a lot of things that happen in sea. Sea's a different beast, right? I mean, you're working against an element all the time, and the sea is unpredictable. You don't, you guys can get your forecast and everything like that, but things can change in an instant, right? I mean, that life is it's a rough life out there.
Yeah, so everybody thinks that flooding is a submariner's biggest fear. It's not. If a submarine starts to sink, if you're deep enough, you just implode. Okay,
right?
Take a beer can, put it in, just
get the pressure.
Okay,
yeah.
If you sink slow in shallow water, yeah, that's a nightmare. But the real terrifying part of a submariner's life is fires. Okay. Right. In my first deployment, we had 5 fires in the first 3 months that we were deployed. I mean, I've lost count on how many fires I fought on that submarine. But in my last book, I tell the story of the last fire that I fought, which was we 2-month deployment, came in. I got a week left before my EAOS strikes out. And I got put on fire watch when we had tied up to the pier, and the next day I was on a fire watch, I should say. And I'm all pissed off, and I'm kind of I'm sitting in the machinery room, I'm sitting on the extinguisher. And that little birdie that talks to you said, "Hey, stupid, get off that extinguisher and get yourself ready to go." So I right myself and get it ready. And these 2 kids were underneath this huge pump debrazing it. And the torch that they were debrazing, settling torch, let go, burned his hand, dropped it on his back, wedged in underneath this giant pump, hit the lag, and everything in a submarine is, oil, grease. Imagine your kitchen, imagine your stove if you're just running machinery and a diesel generator that's as big as, 2 or 3 Suburbans put together, right, with 16-inch pistons. The oil and stuff that's everywhere is so damn dangerous. If you add an open flame to it, you got a problem. Well, this particular day, we had a problem. That torch let go, and it just lit that machinery room on fire faster than you can possibly believe. I'm fighting to get this kid out of here. And what I didn't know is that ended up being nightmares for me for damn near 40 years until I figured out how to address it, you know?
Wow.
So we get the kid out of there, and, I'm dumping the first CO2 on it, calling the fire away, and got a second CO2 dumped on it. It had very little effect. So you can't leave. So I stood there going, man, after all this is how I'm going to die, frickin' fire tied to a pier in Groton, Connecticut. Right. And then boom, one of my shipmates grabbed my shoulder, ripped me out, and they dumped a 2-inch fire main on it and got it under control.
Wow. I do recall, because I think I talked to a Navy recruiter, and they did say that I think everybody learns to be a firefighter, because on a ship, that is pretty common, even in, I guess, submarines too. I mean, it sounds very common that you're gonna have a fire. Like it's not if, it's when, right? It sounds like it's almost guaranteed there's gonna be a fire, and that you guys need to know how to put it out, especially when you're dealing with grease, oil, stuff like that, because water and oil, that spreads it. So I mean, I'm sure there's a whole thing that you guys got to learn and become basically firefighters as well.
Yeah. So in the Marine Corps, they teach you to be a rifleman, right? Rifleman first.
Right.
Yeah? So you're pretty spot on. If you're gonna join the Navy, you better be prepared to be a fireman.
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, you just never know when that time's going to come in. And like you said, that, at least on a ship, you have that option of, there's probably life rafts and things like that. But I mean, on a submarine, man, that's when you see that fire. I imagine everybody in that submarine's like, put that mother out now, right? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like ASAP. All bodies get over here. We need to make sure, because I mean, that could go sour super quick. I mean, fires, tend to spread. Now, do they have a lot of different compartments that you guys close off and stuff like that? Or is it just, man, when this some bitch goes, it could spread all the way through? Yeah. Wow.
Imagine putting yourself inside your bedroom, inside your house, light it on fire, light your bedspread on fire. Okay. Now What do you do? You've got, and again, you black out your windows. Okay. Now what do you do? Right. You either succeed or die. Right. And if you don't succeed in putting that fire out or staying put so that the fire suppression team that's forming behind you can find the origin of the fire, right? If you don't do your job, 120 men die. Period.
And not only is the fire a thing, it's the smoke from the fire that is even worse. It cuts off oxygen. So I mean, do they have like oxygen tanks on there? I mean, for you guys, or I mean, and then I mean, damn, man, once you put the Sun-B out, there's still that residue of smoke in the air, and you gotta that's just filling up the lungs. I mean, that part can't be good either. I mean, for you guys, that's probably another part that's not disclosed, is all that fumes that you're gonna breathe in after you put it out. There's nothing but smoke. How do you guys flush that out?
Yeah, right. Well, if you're in a place where you can get your snorkel up,
right.
If you're somewhere where you can, okay. If you're somewhere where you can't, you got a problem, okay. But if you're somewhere where you can get to the surface, that's the first thing you want to do. You want to get to the surface,
air quality, man.
Start ventilating, right? But again, you start ventilating a submarine full of smoke, you're going to be telling the whole world where you are. So it's a tricky one. All right.
Yeah. All of a sudden, in the ocean, there's a little smoke coming out,
right,
out of the water. Like, the hell.
Right. So, one of the things that I have a hard time getting people to understand is that I have serious issues with my lungs. Okay.
Yeah.
And for 40 plus years now, they've asked me, "Well, you've smoked, right?" I said, "No, I've never smoked in my life, ever. It's just something I never did." Okay.
Right.
But my lungs have the resident or the resemblance of somebody who smoked for 20 or 30 years. Okay. And that, I wheeze, I have asthma, as they say, and my throat, I've got to constantly sucking on cough drops to soothe my throat. And the only answer that anybody, can come up with is, well, what happened to you in the Navy?
Exposure.
Far too many fires.
Absolutely. Right. I mean, because, dude, I mean, you could, burn toast in your house, right? And it will smell like burnt toast for for a couple days sometimes, right? I mean, you're sitting in a place that's compartmentalized and it's very low. I mean, I imagine that part's got to be rough because the air quality at that point in time just went down. You guys you breathing in nasty, air all the time. That's definitely not something they're going to disclose or talk about.
Well, you know how they say triggers, right? Well, anytime I smell anything, you want to talk about, all the bells and whistles and alarms going off in your head, your body, your emotions, right? So if you want to have fun, take a little smoke and send it into a room full of veterans. You'll figure out who the submariners are real quick. Submariners immediately go find that smoke.
Well, that's 100% because, and that's what I think a lot of sometimes civilian people don't realize. That to you, like even like a burnt toast or something, could set you off because that smell, that odor meant life or death for you, right? As soon as you smelt that was a reaction that you needed to react to. Same thing with us, like if there was scud alarms and shit, boom, so we hear alarms or booms and bangs, we're told to hit the deck. These are all things we've always had reaction points. That's a reaction point for you. It's just the odor of, I imagine, smoke. Like, oh shit, where's that fire at? And the instinct in you wants to go put it out. You're like, oh gosh, damn, there's a big acreage fire, over there. I could smell it miles away. You probably have a very good sense of smell in terms of for that kind of stuff. Everything else probably can't smell worth a crap, but I'm sure once you smell a little bit of smoke, you probably smell that again.
That's true, but I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do something here. I just got to keep it between us, all right? So my wife doesn't find out. I told my wife that my sense of smell was diminished when we had all these kids because I could never smell a poo-poo in a baby's diaper. Okay,
right.
So that was my excuse for not changing diapers with my children. Don't tell anybody now because I got a lot of grandchildren. And I don't want to let that excuse die. Right?
No, and all the other dads out there, hey, can't.
It was the military, man. It messed up my nose. Too many burn pits, right?
Yeah. Or you put on the diaper backwards a couple times, just once they know you can't do it, they're just like, just give it to me, I'll do it. Okay. I can't do it. Nah, so now that you got out and stuff, when you ended up getting out, you did 10 years, right? Before you got out? Or how long did you do?
I did 4.
Oh, you did 4 years?
Yeah. So what I didn't know is the Navy was doing an eval on one of my injuries, and I didn't know any of this. So when my EAOS popped at the end of 4, I was debating whether to stay in or not. And they said, well, we're going to, it's kind of a longer story, but the shorter version is they were going to leave me on medical. And I said, no, I ain't doing that. Because somebody warned me about getting a medical hold. And I was like, screw that. I'm not going to go pick up trash. And I just spent 3 years in the fleet, right? I'm not going to go, stand on a base somewhere and do this crap. So I said, no, I'm opting out. And they scheduled me to meet with VA. So I was discharged from Navy at the end of my 4-year active run and sent to the reserves for 2 years and to VA. And that's kind of where my experience with the VA began. And I talk about that in this book, A Date with Suicide, because it is a key part of our fellow vets understanding that they're not alone in their experiences, especially with the VA.
Yeah. And, they like to send people around the ring around the rosy, kind of, so to speak. And I know that, some places are better than others. I know I went through a lot of it myself. I think, it's a common story for a lot of veterans out there. If it probably wasn't for my wife, I probably wouldn't have even made it through the VA stuff, because they got me to a point where I wanted to punch someone, and I just was like an irritable. You know, they were actually intensifying my shit, right? And they kept wanting to sending me off to another this, another that, and then that was starting to trigger me. I'm like, you guys are starting to make me triggered. You know, now right now, instead of eliminating my triggers, you guys are starting to bring forward my triggers. And so yeah,
Truth to word.
It's a common
Truth to
thing.
word.
Right.
Truth to word. I've said it since the first time I left the VA. I didn't think about suicide, even with the childhood I had. Okay. Until the day I left the VA the very first time. It was such a traumatic experience dealing with the VA and walking through what I had to walk through that when I left, I literally said, and I write it in the book, man, if I've got to live like this, I'll kill myself. Now, all the crap that I went through in my entire life to that point, I never said it and I never thought that. And again, if you read my first book, my wife says you didn't have an abusive childhood. You were tortured. Okay. She never knew anything about this until I handed her the finished copy, right? We as veterans are so smart, right? We don't talk about anything. We got to change that. But
right.
The point is that, Brian, I got to tell you, you are spot on. The VA is PTSD.
Yeah, it's 100%, man. I'll go to one of my appointments for them, and my blood pressure, it goes out the roof. And then they'll be like, you know what? We're going to have you stay because your blood pressure is so high. I'm like, listen, I felt my blood pressure raise as soon as I knew I woke up this morning and I had to come here. Right. And I was like, and then I knew I had to do blood pressure. I don't know why, but it just triggers me automatically and gets me going. You know, and so when I go there, my blood pressure's high. Well, no shit.
Yep.
No shit, guys. I didn't really want to be here, but I got to be here, and I don't, you know, you guys want to send me through this, send me through. I walked out of one of my appointments in such a fog that when I was driving, I hit someone, a lady crossing the fucking street, because my mind was totally in a fog. It was the weirdest. She brought out this whole fog that I left with, right? Like I went and talked to her, and I didn't feel better about shit. I was like bogged down by it now, and walked out of there not feeling, you know, like any better. So my mind wasn't even like concentrating, and I didn't hit her hard, at least, thank God. But I nudged her enough to where she fell down, right? And she got up with her friend, and they were like, "What are you doing?" And I'm just like, "I am so sorry. Oh my gosh." And thank God they were cool about it. Nothing really came of it, because I mean, that could have turned into a bigger issue, really, honestly. Me even tapping her, hitting her, whatever, that could have turned into cops coming, and then I would probably have to explain to them, like, "Listen, I'm actually, I think they triggered me to having some kind of a weird, like my mind ain't right now."
Yeah.
You know, and then after I hit that lady, that sent me off into a whole other thing, you know, of like sketched out, scared, like I just hit someone, you know. It really, I don't know. Sometimes I have actually felt so much better now that I've been kind of removed from it. I mean, I've been 100%, you know, since 2018. I'm unemployable. I'm rated at like 80%, but they deem me unemployable 2018. So that rates me at 100%.
Yep.
But it took me a couple years, right, to kind of get myself like to a healthier me, to a better version of me. And it was only because I was able to get myself out of a stressful environment, which was my job at the time and everything else, and remove myself, and then have my time to actually get a chance to love myself, appreciate myself, laugh at myself, get to know myself, and realized, my gosh, damn, man, I've been spending a lot of my life living for other people. Right. And it's prevented me probably from being the best version of myself. And I want to make sure that I advocate to the young ones to kind of deal with their stuff while they're in their 20s and don't go 20 years of building up more and ruining relationships and not repairing yourself because you're just too prideful of who you are, or told that you know you're not allowed to fail. Failure's not an option, things like that. Failure's not always a bad thing. Sometimes the greatest things come out of a failure, and
Yeah.
it's
So
just how we make the situation, it's what we make out of it.
yeah. So you just walked through the last chapter of my book, A Date with Suicide. In that book, I focus on two things: what happened to me and why. And I call out four things. What is a veteran? Okay. What is trauma? Why is trauma different for all of us? Right. Talking about trauma and telling your story. Okay. And in the last chapter, I walk through what you just got done saying. All right. Whatever we've been through, what we need to learn and understand is that boot camp all by itself will affect your physical, your mental, your spiritual, and your emotional bodies. Yeah. Now, the best tool that the military has to train us is anger, right? Yeah. It's hard to shoot somebody or do something that needs to be done if you like the person, right? Okay. Right. How do you motivate people in the military or even in the sports complex? You got to piss them off, right?
Yep.
So anger is always our go-to emotion. And what does anger do? It masks, covers up, protects everything else about your existence. So when you're angry, you're not thinking. Your emotions are either non-existent or cloudy, right? Your spirit is shut down. So your physical, your mental, your spiritual, and your emotional bodies are all interrupted and in many cases broken, okay? When all four of those sacred parts of your being are working well, they're working together. When we're dealing with mental health issues, the four corners of our sacred being, our physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional bodies are fractured. They're fighting each other. Our head is saying one thing and our heart is saying another. Our spirit, right? The faith, the things that we believe in are confused. They're what? Angry? Okay. They're hurt. They're insulted. Pride, ego. What is it? Right. And our physical body, right? Our physical body is so affected, we can't understand it. So we have pains in places that nobody can explain, right? So when we learn when we start recognizing these things and we go to get healthy, one thing the VA or mental health doesn't focus on, and I'm trying to preach at the top of my lungs, is the fact that you have to learn to heal all four corners of your existence. And don't be afraid of them, right? If your head is saying one thing and it makes your heart feel better, listen to those two. If the two are in conflict, find out why. But again, if you fall in love and somebody breaks up with you, what hurts? Your heart? Well, you can't eat, right? Somebody dies. You have a physical reaction. You have a spiritual reaction, an emotional reaction. So it's okay to do that when somebody dies or when you fall in love, right? When you fall in love, remember puppy love, right? Yeah. Man, you could float on air. So your body had no weight. Your heart was just pumping with, oh man, this is the cat's meow, right? In the meantime, your head's telling you, hey man, you might want to watch out for this thing, okay? You're gonna fight for the mind soon. Right? You're not listening to anything. And then when you get pumped, man, your heart is physically hurting, right? So how can an emotion give you pain? It's connected to your physical existence. Your head is scrambled, just like you said, on leaving the VA. When you left the VA in that fog, all four of your sacred beings, your physical, your mental, your spiritual, and your emotional bodies were fighting with you. And they were fighting amongst themselves. They were trying to, in one part, get you out of there, right? Your head saying, we need to leave. Your heart saying, no, we need help. Your physical body's going, I don't know what to do, right? And then your spirit, the place that we start with and finish with, is just lost. And you're trying to figure all this out. You step out of that environment, go someplace quiet, calm yourself, right? Try to get rid of the anxiety and realign all of those four corners of your existence. That's our end game. That's what I'm trying to preach to my fellow veterans. We have to, you've been saying it here, Brian. You have to look inward. You have to
Right.
heal yourself. You
We
have
do.
to take care of yourself. We've
Sure.
done all the other stuff. We've taken care of everybody else. It's time for veterans to take a pause, take care of themselves so that they can go back and take care of others.
100%. You know what? You touched on, you're actually putting a whole different perspective on this that I've never even looked at. And I really actually appreciate it, because especially the when you talk about the way we fight things is with anger, right? I think that seems to be, I think, a lot of people's go-to in the world, even nowadays, right? People are assholes out in town. They're just angry for no freaking reason. You could go up to a drive-through, man. I mean, the person that's serving you is probably fucking mad, and it's like their anger, their defense mechanism, or how they're fighting whatever they're going through, is being angry. And I think that's a thing that I don't think a lot of people look back at. Is that I think that's a big defense mechanism in human nature, right? Is
Yes,
especially like if they feel like, oh, I don't have any friends. Well, I'm just going to be an asshole to everybody,
yes,
or something like
yes.
that. So they don't want friends. They just want to be mean because they feel like no one really likes them. So the way they're going to look at it is, I'll just be an asshole to everybody then.
Yes. And the anger covers up whatever pain they're dealing with. Now, as veterans, listen, we're programmed to use anger to accomplish tasks. Okay?
Right.
I don't remember being angry at the fire. Okay. Any one of them that I fought, I don't remember that. But what I do remember is that blankness that comes when you've crossed the Rubicon of anger. When you get to that other side of anger, that, anger's behind me. I got to slow down to let it catch up to me. You're in there fighting that fire because you're just flat out determined. You're not going to let 120 guys die. It's not going to happen. That fire is not getting through me. Again, whether you're on the battlefield or whether you're a supply sergeant getting the bombs and bandages to the guys putting bullets down range, right? It's all the same for all of us. We're fighting so hard to take care of everybody that we lose ourselves. But in the military, we are programmed to use anger as our weapon to make sure we do not fail, right? We have to figure out how to unprogram ourselves.
And see, boom, that's it, right? I think that it's hard because, right, this is where we'll kind of go back to, while you're in the military, you only get to the military while you're in, because once you get out, even once you start to tell them you're getting ready to check out, there's a lot of times you kind of get treated like, hey, all right,
you suck.
Yeah, everybody's pissed off already that you're checking out. So, I gotta imagine when you're getting ready to check out and stuff like that. I mean, I'm losing my train of thought here on this one, but
you were talking about the transition. That's where you were going.
Right. So yeah, when you're the military, they need to do a better job of turning the switch off, right? If hey, we needed you guys to use this anger towards a mission or whatever, but we need you, like when you're going out and you're going to be a dad, your kids aren't recruits. They haven't been through basic training. So don't be over there. Cause I was kind of like that, right? Like, hey, I told you to do this. Why didn't you do it? You didn't listen to me. If you didn't listen to me, you could die, and I was talking to him like that at one point in time, where it could be life or death, it could be life or death,
Yeah.
So my first two kids, my oldest two, they went through a dad that was just, I was very militant.
Right.
I took it when I got out. I still kind of took it all with me and was having a hard time transitioning myself and realizing all these people that I'm working with, my kids, they didn't go through the same training as me. They're not going to look at things the same way as me. They're going to have a different perspective. And that wasn't even a thought in my head, that other people have a different perspective, right? Because I've been trained this way, and if we don't go this way, it's a mission failure or death, And so I really was like that when I got out. Everything, I'm sure a lot of people that came across me, even the, my verbiage and the way we talk, we have acronyms for just about everything, and we refer to things differently than other people. So when I was talking, they're just like, what the hell? Hey, whoa, bro, we're not Marines here. I'm just like, well, it should be, like, like, I mean, but it took a while to really rewire my thoughts. Right. And I didn't have no help to do that. It was me having to realize it on my own that, hey, bro, like, you're like way too Marine, right? Like, and a lot of people don't understand that. They're not going to get why you're X, Y, and Z. And we're not good at a lot of times explaining ourselves, right? We got to get something done. It needs to get done. Don't ask me why, right? Like, that's a lot of times with the kids, right? It's like, you're not going to ask me 1,000 questions, like, we need to get it done, and that's how it always was with, my kids and everything else, and the way I think I operated. And I mean, I probably went that way for many, many years, because there was no transition for me when I got out. And I got out from, literally, I was over in the Middle East, I spent like a good 6 to 8 months over there, go home, go back to work, just go back to, like, basically kind of do my checking out. Still did a little bit of time there, but I was on I was getting out like 63 days early. They were still letting us get out on early EAS. If you had 63 days in the bank, you could get out. And I was eager to get out at that time. So I was like, man, I'm taking that
62 and a wake up.
Yeah. I'm taking it all, man. So, but when I went out and I got home and I started doing things, I know that I was still very Marine. There was no transition. They didn't send me to any kind of classes or anything like that. The only one class I think they ever sent us to was talking about our VA rating. Try to get yourself 0%, or something like that. And that's the only thing I could ever recall them talking to us. But there was when you get out, you're going to probably go through some kind of separation anxiety, because you went from, like, basically a cohesive unit, family type situation. Now you're kind of going back to a place that used to be that maybe for you, but it's different now. And, just all the things that you kind of go through, man. I mean, it was like, here's your papers. Bye. You don't want to read on this. Okay. Bye.
Yep.
There's no soft landing for yourself when you get out the door. They slam the son of a bitch hard as hell and kick you off the step.
Yeah. Ryan over in Norwich, Connecticut. He was an artillery guy. He's got a podcast called Everlasting Veteran.
Yeah, I know Ryan Landry. Yep.
Yeah, he does a great job in talking on transition. And when I was on his podcast a year or two ago, it's when I really started paying attention to the transition part. When I was listening to him and I listened to his podcast and then I had the opportunity to talk with him, the way he kind of laid out what happens to you when you transition from the military, with all the things that I've done, it never really dawned on me how much of the transitioning affects our ability, to survive post-military, right?
Right.
And the key things that he pointed out, and now I'm taking some things he said and preaching as loud as I can. And that's the finding our purpose and our identity. Because for me, when I was escorted off the base, I mean, I had a top secret clearance the day before, and now, I qualify to flip burgers, right? Okay. So it was, my identity was stripped from me along with all of that camaraderie. Right. And I knew that they wouldn't be able to talk to me about their next missions because it was classified. Right. And you can't talk about certain things, so on and so on. But Ryan Landry does a great job in his podcast. So if, I don't mean to be promoting somebody else's podcast, but he's a fellow vet and does a great job with helping the community.
Yeah, I've actually had him on my show, and I've been on his show as well. I mean,
thank God, right?
No, yeah, no,
He's a good dude.
I'm all about spreading awareness for all our brothers and sisters. There's no competitiveness in this world for me, not in the veteran world, right?
Well, I don't need
I know
Marines
that
and Army
I
guys
know
shooting each other, right?
I know that other people do. I know there's people out there that take offense, or but for me, I think this is all what it's all about.
Yes.
Is and you could be on every different one of my buddies' podcasts and have a different story and different perspective, right? I mean, you were on Willis's as well, and he's a good buddy of mine. Is Homefront sit rep, great people over there.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, that's what this is all about, man. Is because we need to. The more that we can get people talking about all this kind of stuff, is the more that we're going to get others to talk about it, and maybe at some point in time, people can start feeling like they're not alone, right? And that it's not just them. Because I think that that's one of the one of the things that you go through is feeling that you're all alone at this point in time, right? Because now you are removed, and now you're back to a place that maybe you don't feel as in place anymore, right? You're at a place where you don't feel in place.
Yeah,
you're starting to feel out of place, or and you're going through all these different things. And I think that a lot of people do that, where they go through and their mental health just starts to deteriorate because they start to feel like, wow, no one understands me and no one gets it. Because you could talk to a lot of your friends and even your loved ones and tell them stories, and they'll just look at you with like, what? It's harder to talk to people that don't get it versus other people that do get it. So these guys started getting these isolations, and guys and gals started getting these isolation boxes because they feel like they're all alone again, right? And so
yes,
the quicker that they can start to find that there's groups out there, nonprofits, there's other than the VA, right? I mean, because the VA will, like you said, induce your triggers and stuff. Go through them for getting yourself what you may need or what you're entitled to. But fall back on the nonprofits, the these groups of other veterans out there. And now we have a great world of technology where we can do these video things, and it could be a lot more in person than it ever used to be, right? And where we can do these on calls and feel like we can still chat and see each other, and without the hugs and the Phillies and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's kind of nice.
Yeah. Transition's a big piece. It's a very big piece, and the military is great at making us feel guilty. And
right.
We do an even better job at allowing ourselves to feel guilty. And again, once you start feeling guilt, it goes right back to the four corners of your sacred being, right? It affects all of you, and you have to learn how to rebalance yourself, realign yourself, ground yourself, right? And create a something that is not so one-sided. Like, I'm going to work on this. We've got to get guys to figure out how to balance. And let me close that thought with this statement. I was so anti-meditation. Okay, I'm a warrior, man. I'm not doing that meditation crap, right? VA, private side, everybody was telling me meditate. I ain't freaking I'm not doing this. I'm not going to go home, right? I'm not doing it. Okay. Well, my anxiety got so severe, and I stopped with the medication. I couldn't take that crap anymore. I didn't want to drink anymore. I just tired of it. And one day I was sitting there, and I just said, you know what? What is this? What am I supposed to do now? Breathe in through my nose and out through my mouth. I put my head back, and I just started concentrating on breathing in through my nose and out through my mouth. Well, 5 minutes go by, and it dawned on me that I was actually focused on breathing in and breathing out. That's it. And when I kind of realized that, I had this overwhelming sense of calm. And then, holy hell, my anxiety was gone. That nasty ball of garbage that was swirling and punching at my gut was completely gone. And I couldn't believe what it felt like to be alive without anxiety. And now this was like 5 seconds, 3, 4, 5, as I that thought started transitioning, and I stopped concentrating on breathing in, breathing out. And then, bam, that anxiety came back and smashed me right in the gut. But that 5 seconds of peace was all I needed. Every day for the next number of years, I meditated, whether it was for 5 minutes or an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. And I would sit there with my Native American music playing quietly in the background in a dark room, okay, all by myself. And I would sit there, and that is when I really started winning the game against the demons that were coming after me. It was a big turning point for me, and I can't preach it loud enough to all my fellow vets. If you're into the kumbaya and the yoga mats, perfect. It's great. But if you want to just do it quietly on your own, I strongly encourage you. Just find a quiet place, focus on your breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth. Reboot your brain.
Yeah, I think that's a big problem why a lot of people have a hard time healing or clearing their mindset. Really is they're always consumed with other things. They don't know how to disconnect. They're still using their phones all the time, or they're not allowing themselves to disconnect, like doing the meditation where you put everything aside. It's you, and whether you got on some nice tunes or you're listening to some, go out to the waters, the river, the creek, and listen to nature,
Yes.
and just sit down and connect. I mean, I think that's a big thing that a lot of folks don't do is disconnect from the world,
yes,
so to speak, and then allow that time for themselves. And a lot of times I think people are scared to be by themselves because they have those demons and that they haven't worked with, or they don't want to wrestle with, right? But it's important. It's important, right?
Yeah, it's terrifying, right?
Yeah.
What's the biggest battle we'll ever have in our lives? The battle from within.
Yep.
Okay. We've conquered all the rest. The battle we keep losing is with ourselves. We are our biggest enemies and our biggest critics. Okay. We think we suck, right? And we walk around that way. Well, we don't. We've done things that suck. Okay. We've done things that are great. We've done things that we don't want to remember. But you know what? That's a part of who you are. And every day you can put that stuff down. And like you keep saying, Brian, you refound your true inner self. You've refound that person that you always wanted to be, right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, that's what we need to do. We came to this earth in a certain way. We went through a number of things in our life. Now our challenge is to conquer ourselves and win that war against ourselves. Stop beating ourselves up and give ourselves some credit. Give ourselves a lot of credit for the things that we've accomplished, not the things we screwed up.
People deserve that. I mean, I think that life is incredibly short when you actually take a snap picture of the whole of your life, and when you equate it to the rest of time, it's a very sliver of time that you get here, right? To walk earth and enjoy whatever is on earth. That people don't take the time to smell the flowers, don't take the time to look and see what's going on, right? They're too consumed with either being on their cell phones or something else, right? I when I finally started to slow down, smell the flowers, look at my scenery, appreciate things, it's a wonder what everything else starts to fall in place when you can align your mindset to think differently or to slow down. And they even teach us in the military, when shit hits the fan, to not freak out, right? To not be the guy that's scattered brain, because a lot of times when we freak out, you make bad decisions, your impulse, you don't think about it, you just do it, and you run around with your head cut off and get killed. But when you slow yourself down and you give yourself time to not impulsively, and that's even comes down to when you hear some news that might piss you off. The best thing sometimes to do is slow it down.
Yeah.
digest that situation. Don't react to it right away. Give yourself some time to actually chew on it, taste it, and then swallow it. Don't just swallow it and go, because there's too many times that you're going to say things that you don't mean. There's too many times you're going to do some major damage that you can't take back. And if you give yourself some time to kind of process things, slow down, it's a wonder what the outcome can be for you on those kind of things. And I think that's, I've learned that in my life by being an impulse reactor, which is I receive the news and I fucking just react to it immediately, versus receive the news. All right, let me just think about this for a second, and not react to it. And I totally different outcomes.
Yeah. Again, Brian, you were trained to be a warrior, right? And that's what you're trained to do. You don't have time to react. You got that drill sergeant upside your face telling you, I want an answer and I need an answer now. Okay. That's great.
Everything was life or death in terms when they correlated things to us in training, right? It was
right.
We didn't move. If and I was just talking to my wife and my brother about this, is I had to run everywhere I went in boot camp. I mean, if I didn't run fast enough, if I even was on a slow jog, the drill instructor literally would snap me up and put me on the quarterdeck and smoke me, telling me I'm moving, I'm walking. I'm like, bro, I'm jogging, I've dead ass sprinting. The guy telling me I'm too slow. You
didn't say, bro, I was jogging, did you?
No, I definitely
you wish you did.
Damn well I didn't say that. I did lose my mind with that drill instructor though at one point, because the guy kept just egging me on, right? I mean, like I said, I couldn't do anything right with him, no matter how fast or whatever I was doing. And then one time he grabbed me up and I just talked to him, and because in boot camp we have to talk in third person. This recruit requests permission to speak to drill instructor such and such. Everything is spoken third person. And I was telling him, he was like, he sent me up to the quarterdeck, and when you get up to the quarterdeck, you got to remove everything out of your cargo pockets, take your blouse off, and they just sit there and they smoke you, make you do up downs, mountain climbers, and I'm sitting there fucking doing it, just smiling at him. I'm laughing at him like, fucking yeah, give me some more, and he's like, you have a problem, Recruit Roof? And I was like, yes. I said, this recruit has a problem with the drill instructor. And I just ended up kind of telling him, like, fucking, you keep picking on me, man. You keep calling me out for nothing. I just basically went off on him. And he at that moment, he goes, oh, what? You don't think I don't even like nobody in here. And he was like, he just started grabbing Acosta, come over here. He just started grabbing other recruits, and he grabbed about 5 of them, put them all on the quarterdeck, makes me stand up, and he said, you guys are going to get smoked because Recruit Roof thinks I like other recruits. I don't like any of you fuckers. So you get to watch them get smoked. And so I was like, oh gosh, he just sat there and smoked the hell out of those 5 he's like, no. He's like, get comfortable, relax yourself. Like, don't you dare stand at POA. He was telling me, it's like, you can even sit down if you want, I'm just like, oh my gosh, man. Those 5 were like pissed at me.
One of the things I work hard to teach fellow vets is that once you leave the military, one of the hardest things for us to do is to stop following a chain of command and stop believing that we have to answer somebody's question just because they posed one to us. Okay. Right. So like when you go to the VA, we kind of walk in there and we go back to that military mentality. And then the people on the other side, they treat us like that because they think they hold power over us. In a sense, they do. But what I'm trying to get fellow vets to understand is to break that chain of command mentality and fight for yourself, because it's the only way you're going to survive in the civilian world. And don't worry about responding or answering somebody's question. You no longer have to. The day your discharge hits your inbox, look, that's it. You don't answer to anybody else anymore. And it's helpful to get veterans to really, hammer that thought home to themselves, so that when somebody says to you, whatever the question is. One of the things I say is pause, do a count. 1, 2, 3, go to 5, and wait and see what happens, both for yourself and for the person asking the question. There's nothing more fun than pissing off a civilian by just staring at them with that military grade glare and not answering their question. Okay. There's nothing that pisses them off more, especially people at the VA. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. The VA it's definitely been an obstacle for a lot of our veterans. I know. I like I said, I guess it always varies probably from state to state, whether you're being taken care of or not, or getting kind of thrown through the ringer. But let's go ahead and talk more. We've mentioned your book. Now let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about your actual book, and talk about A Date with Suicide, and kind of what the book's about, and let's go ahead and talk about the book.
Yeah. So most folks don't realize it, but more than 50 veterans a day are committing suicide. I wrote an article, and it was published in a couple of places, including At Ease magazine, that's titled A Busload of Veterans. And it kind of walks you through a scenario. If a bus crashes on a highway and, a couple of people get killed, listen, it makes the news. If it happens 2 days in a row, a bus crashes on a Tuesday and then a Wednesday, right? It's now becoming national news. Happens for a third day. Listen, the entire government's going to throw its weight behind this whole thing, right? And say, what's going on, right? There's going to be congressional hearings, and the National Transportation Safety Board is going to go out there, right? Now change the scenario a little bit. What happens if that busload is full of veterans? What happens if 50 veterans a day get killed in a bus? And then it happens again the next day, the next day, and the next day. Well, that's what's going on right now. 50 plus veterans are getting on a bus bound for their date with suicide every single day. We need to solve this problem, because it used to be 22 a day. Now, I really don't buy into that number. All right. And Operation Deep Dive, if you want to take a look at that, you can get a fellow Navy vet magazine, At Ease magazine, Veterans Magazine. She prints that Operation Deep Dive article every quarter, every time it comes out. All right. And basically what they did was they took the VA's 2017-18 report that says we're down to 17 suicides a day, and proves how woefully inadequate and misleading the VA is. All right. Their projections and their study, and this is a multi-year 8-state study, shows that the number is 2.4 times higher than what the VA claims it was. And that was back a couple of years ago. That pushes our number closer to 50. I personally believe the number's more than 100 a day and escalating quickly. All right. The book that I wrote is making an honest effort to attack veteran suicide by telling the stories that I went through while I was struggling with suicide. Yeah, I sat there a number of times with the opportunity and the means to end it. And at one point, I finally said, listen, I've either got to end this pain or I've got to find peace. Now, spoiler alert, I found peace. And now I'm trying to help my fellow vets do the same. But more importantly, or as importantly, the book cover to cover is meant for both veteran and veterans' family. One of my surprising responses, or one of the surprising responses I've gotten from this book, is from the psychological community. One of the 5-star reviews that's out there is from a psychological nurse who retired, who said, after all my years, 30 years in this industry, she couldn't get veterans to talk. And when she read my book, it answered a ton of questions. Right. So the book, let me tell this story real quick. I've had a vet recently reach out to me, met with him, gave me a hug and said, thank you for saving my life. Okay. That's what the book did for him. Another vet is recently bought the book, asked me to sign it and dedicate it to his wife. Right. Because in this, I tell folks how important our spouses are and how much they go through. They can never understand what we went through, but they've always been there. right? And how important it is for our family members, like Don Dunn's book, right? It's a great book. It tells the non-veteran as well as the veteran what we went through in sharing the story, and it's very, very helpful again to veterans and non-veterans alike. Tell the story of trauma and how in writing this book, I realized that trauma can only be evaluated by the person who's been through the trauma. I'm not qualified, nor do I have the right to judge your traumas. In boot camp, for me, boot camp was easy. For one of my recruit shipmates, it wasn't. And that recruit shipmate tried to kill himself. And I had to step into the breach and deal with the blood and mess of this veteran slashing his wrist with a Bic razor that he disassembled, right? So if boot camp was so traumatic for this kid from the Bronx who was a tough kid, and he ended up trying to kill himself, what for me, the trauma, what trauma? You're getting yelled at, so what's the big deal? So I learned that my trauma and somebody else's trauma is our trauma, and we don't have the right or the reason or the rationale to judge it. Right. So I kind of crafted the book in telling these stories and walking through traumatic events like the fire, right? After you've been through enough fires, you'd think you'd be used to it. But what I didn't realize was that particular fire caused nightmares in me that I could never understand until I started figuring out, you know, when I decided to find peace. So it's a heck of a read. You know, it's not as dark as people think because the title is A Date with Suicide, but it certainly opens people's eyes.
That's great. So it's on Amazon. There's go get yourself a copy. And let's see, I got this is the link. I'll make sure I put the link in the description of the show as well, so you guys can find it. Also, you have a website. We'll go ahead, share your website. So I mean, this is probably another place that you can go get yourself a copy of it. Let's see. I need to make sure I put it on here. All right, so here's your website, which it's www.dpaulfleming.com for everybody listening on the audio side, www.dpaulfleming.com. Probably an easier place to go for you guys listening to, or in the description, I'll have it as well. But you want to talk about your website a little bit, or it's pretty much self-explanatory?
Yeah, the website's pretty basic. You know, I'm not a big IT guy,
right?
But it's really basic. It's got my contact information. You know, can connect you to buying the book. You can buy it from me, or you can get it from Amazon. The easiest path, folks tell me, is just go right to Amazon. If you want an autographed book, reach out to me, send me an email, and we'll get it figured out.
All right, that's awesome. See, there's even a little trailer here, huh?
In the first book I wrote, 2,442 Steps to Crazy, I got a 30-second trailer in that kind of lights people up. But I actually haven't. I had another website called Black Hawk Books. One will connect to the other, but I haven't put them all on. Now, I'm still working on the D. Paul Fleming website.
Yeah,
know any IT guys?
Yeah. Not really. I ended up I thought I sent my website off to this website group, but when I ended up got it back, I ended up doing it myself.
I hear you. Yeah, I hear you. Hey, talk to Bob Dunn. I've been trying to con him into rebuilding my website. He's good at that stuff. Bob Dunn.
Oh, yeah.
Don Dunn.
Yeah, Don. Yeah, he's
calling him.
Yeah, well, that's because he's built like I don't know how many by now.
Yeah, he's good at that. One of the biggest things that I can tell my fellow vets is we already talked about the balancing and the working on the four corners of your existence, right? But telling your story is the biggest step I've ever taken. And from talking to fellow vets, again, I had a meeting this morning with another vet who was about to go talk to his family member about what he's been through, because like Don wrote in his book, right, he didn't tell anybody. Okay, and that's one of the downfalls of us as veterans. We've been trained to not complain and not tell our story. Well, we've got to tell our story. And in Don's book, he does it magnificently. Okay. Short chapters, right to the point, and every sentence has a piece in it that'll strike at you.
Yeah, it's easier to read. I mean, that's the thing. That's what I like about a lot of the veteran authors out there. They get kind of to the point. You're not, going through major novels or anything like that. You're kind of getting the real quick. Donald Dunn, I think he laid it out pretty well for a veteran perspective,
and the family members.
Yeah, exactly. And well, I mean, because it was basically to his family members, and that's what drove him to write it. And I mean, I do encourage people out there, and that's another reason why I have my podcast show. If it's another place, if you don't necessarily want to write your story, you could always come on the show and tell your story, and at least start there, right? Get down a path of feeling comfortable to talk about your story, because everybody has a story, whether you deployed, didn't deploy. If you served, you got stories. I mean, if you grew up in life, you'd have stories. So I think it's important that we talk about it, right? Because you just never know who could be listening and gather something from your story, learn from it, and you can help them maybe not go through some of the struggles, some of the heartaches, some of the things that you got and kind of eliminate some steps, or nothing else, provide them tools, that they can use or not use. But talking about it is the only way we can do it. And like I said, the more that we do it, the more I think everybody else will kind of start falling in line and saying, you know what, their story, that's similar to mine. Let me tell mine. You know what I mean?
You're not alone.
Right, exactly. And I think that's a big thing. We got to keep stressing to everybody out there. And Shannon Book has a great song out there, You're Not Alone. It's 100%. You guys are not alone out there. The veterans and first responders as well. Female, male. Too many times we kind of forget about our first responders, but they're affected by things on the daily. I mean, some of them see things more than combat, so especially here in LA. I mean, shoot, man, every day's a shooting somewhere. So, there's a lot of these people going through it. So mental health is still kind of new, right? And acknowledging mental health and starting to tell people it's okay not to be okay, right? Instead of go suck it up, we're in a different world of transitioning, where I think the late 2000s, where they started acknowledging more and more about mental health. And then I think 2020 probably really set it off, because they probably set a couple mental cases for themselves by throwing in COVID and locking people down and inducing fear, and that wasn't good for the veteran environment either, right? And now veterans couldn't even get out of their homes and get out of their places to go get help. There's just so many things, right? And I think the more, like I said, we have people out there to talk about it, it's helped me a lot, right? It's helped me a lot versus having to go see a psych who maybe has no relation to anything that I'm saying and doesn't really understand me. And versus having these conversations with people that do get it or understand, like, oh yeah, bro, I totally understand and I get that.
Yeah, to kind of hit on that, civilians ask me constantly now, what can we do to help? And I say, well, buckle up, because here's what I'm going to tell you to do. Shut up and listen. Okay?
Right. Yeah.
Listen. When a vet says, or a vet starts talking, they're not looking for a response. If they want a response, they'll ask for it.
Right.
And don't judge. Okay. Yeah. When a veteran wants to talk, he wants to be heard. Nothing more. He doesn't want you to interrupt. He doesn't want you to add anything. He doesn't want you to, do anything except listen. So I stole a line from Dr. Fraser Crane, right? Okay. Fraser on TV.
Right.
I'm listening. And I tell vets all the time, if you can't find somebody to hear your story or listen to you, call me. Send me an email. I'll listen. Okay. And we as veterans need to do that for ourselves. Okay. Because we know better. When a vet starts talking, listen, we shut up and listen, you know?
Yeah.
And the crazy part is, you know, a vet recently told me, said, oh, I'm getting divorced. Okay. Again, right out of the comedy scene. I come home and I tell my wife, blah, blah is getting divorced. And she starts asking questions. I say, I don't know.
Right.
He didn't offer anything.
Yeah.
All he said was, I'm getting divorced.
Yes.
Right? He didn't say anything else. I didn't ask.
Right.
It wasn't offered.
Yeah.
Okay. If he wanted me to respond, he'd say, any thoughts? Then it would be an open conversation. Okay. Now that's on a basic everyday topic. When a veteran wants to tell you a story, know that it's only a piece of a story.
Right.
And right now it's only the piece that's bubbling enough to come out. So just listen. Okay. Go sit down, have a cup of coffee or a beer, whatever it is you do, and just listen. Okay. The last point I'm going to try to make here is post 9/11, when it became cool to be a veteran, because it wasn't, you know, from coming out of Vietnam, it was a nightmare, right?
Right. Yep.
So post 9/11 and the new phrase of thank you for your service. Listen, we've got to come up with a saying as simple and as direct as thank you for your service. We've got to do the same thing for mental health, right? I need the community out there to tell me what that saying is going to be. Okay. So whatever you're doing, Brian, talk to your guests, talk to the people around you. Say, what is it we can say that acknowledges mental health? And it's as not a stigma, because we have to make this conversation as commonplace as thank you for your service. Or, right, on November 11th, Veterans Day, everybody gets a free meal from You Pick the Place, right? What is our mental health day where everybody gets to stand up, salute, and say, yeah, I got issues. Okay. And we all just salute back and listen, right? We've got to have that phrase, that statement.
Well, it is discouraging to see that June is Mental Health Month, and then they throw another, make it a different month, right?
Yeah, let's not go down that path.
And I won't even say it, but I'm just again, we're demeaning men. It's men's mental health, right? And they go. Well, the June.
The third highest suicide rate is women.
Oh no, and definitely I know women too, but I know June is like where they try to even acknowledge just men's mental health, right? And I get it, women, men. Right. It just sucks that whenever they try to go do something, it gets overshadowed, and it's like, oh, well, they just need to get over it, like those type of things. We got to get to a level of taking it serious,
normalizing the conversation. Okay.
Right. And making
so that when I say the word suicide, people stop cringing.
Right.
Okay? If you want to stop a conversation in a room full of people, just say the word suicide.
Yep.
Everybody stops. We need
start walking away.
That. That's right. Okay. And look, I got a big mouth and a bald head, so I'm preaching it as loudly as I can.
Right. And I mean, we got to stop the Facebooks and all these other places too. As soon as they see someone's talking about this, you get shadow banned, you get taken off, all those types of things, right?
Yes.
We definitely got to do better. But I want to say, brother, I appreciate you coming on, talking about everything you got going on. Is there any last, I forgot or anything you would like to add before we head out?
No. I'm grateful to be on your show. I'm grateful to help spread the word. And I really enjoyed listening to your stories and how you've worked towards avoiding your date with suicide and working on your mental health. And I encourage you to keep spreading that word. And if you want to have me back on your show, as often as you would, I would be happy to be on it.
Absolutely. I'm always, there's always an open seat for my show as well, just in case too, like you have another book drop or there's something heavy on your heart that you want to try to get out, always a place here for sure. But once again, brother, I appreciate your time and service. I also appreciate the things that you're still doing for our country and our veterans. We need all the help we can get. And, we all swore in and took an oath that just never dies. And we owe it to each other to still be there for one another. Right. And
yes,
I appreciate you, brother. Have an amazing week and great day. and we'll be in touch. And this isn't just a podcast friendship, it's a brothership. So keep in touch.
Keep the faith. Keep moving forward, baby.
All right. Thank you, D. Paul. We'll see you, brother. All right, friends and fam. Well, that's going to go ahead and wrap up another great interview. I enjoyed our conversation. Once again, it's not an easy conversation to have to talk about suicide, but it's necessary, right? And before we head out, don't forget, guys, there's the crisis lifeline. If you don't want to talk to somebody and you just want to keep it discreet, call 988. And for you veterans out there, press 1. Let's not, make a bad choice, and when something can get fixed, and sometimes our mindsets aren't right. And I trust me, I've been in bad places, but I can assure you, you can get out of them. You can get out of them, and you will eventually look back and say, damn, I'm glad I didn't do something so crazy. But once again, Crisis Lifeline, 988, press 1. Don't let the day kick your ass. Make sure you guys are out there kicking the day's ass. We'll see you guys on the next one. Until next time.